I think one common thing I see a lot of more so is the straight arms.
Yeah.
And almost just saying the old myth of I've just got to rock my shoulders, and then again the path changes, and it becomes very hard for the face to be managed.
Something we commonly see here, Danny. Ready?
Yep.
Or this one here. Now, I had no idea where the ball struck the face on any of those, right? That could have hit anywhere and I didn't feel it whatsoever.
Yep.
The first, very wristy, standing over there and flicking it up there.
Yep.
Okay. Mainly because when I was doing so, I hit the bottom of the face and all over here. The second one, when you induce so much tension like I did, which a lot of players believe that they shouldn't use their wrists, try and remove moving parts as such, over the putt, and they hit putts like that, all of a sudden there's no feel.
Correct.
Right? So let's talk about using the wrists in putting. And neither of those are, let's say, going to produce long-term positive outcomes for players.
Yep.
My preference actually would probably be the first one, which is a little bit more wristy,
Mm-hmm.
a little bit of a pop stroke up there, because you can get some feel. And I feel that a lot of players, they're under the assumption that they need to take the wrists out and they just need to use their sternum back and forth. But if you are thinking about in everyday life, with a creative pursuit, any other sport, you use your fingers and the micro moves and the muscles to get feel. You don't have a throw from point A to point B and lock up your wrist.
Correct.
Right? So why do you believe that players do this when it comes to putting?
So I think because the fact, again, it's not as an aggressive move as, like say, a hit, a throw, to that nature of the speed it's coming off. There is an element of both to a degree. I think one common thing I see a lot of more so is the straight arms.
Yeah.
And almost just saying the old myth of I've just got to rock my shoulders, and then again the path changes, and it becomes very hard for the face to be managed. So that's the most common one I see. But I've also seen, you could say, a flick. Which again, if we were talking tempo and things like that, becomes hard to also control. So I would say for me, the reason why, once people have maybe worked on it a little bit of trying to understand how it should feel against what they feel, they then would realise the pace would become so much more controllable. And it's just trying to make the errors, or you could say the bad shots, better. Not the bad shots to go in the hole, but just the bad puts to be better. So whether that is them tapping in more, then that would be fine. But for me, I would just say I think it's a combination of both. I think trying to keep everything so locked up is, to some players, a hard feeling. Especially if they're a field player, a creative player, to see different things. But I think then you don't want to obviously promote too much. So there's a bit of both in there.
Yeah, I think a really good reference, and we were talking about it before, is a consistent suspension point, right? And if I'm setting up in the address position, this is a great reference that I think players can use at home. If they simply just get a line, if they're using an analysis tool, drew it from the end of the putter more towards the center of the sternum. Now, what we see in putting, there's really two main moving parts, isn't there? We would call it the thoracic rotation, or the upper body rotation back and forth. And then that would produce the general putting stroke look. And then secondary to that would be a slight amount of wrist hinge. Now, part of that is due to the weight of the putter swinging back and through and being able to feel the putter release, but that is also how you get your feel, right? So if I'm setting up to a putt and I do a motion that looks like this, where I'm going to, let's say, have a very proficient upper body thoracic rotation back and through, but then the next one, I'm going to add a little bit of wrist and I do the same thing. It just feels so much more fluid. The second way.
And I think if people were to actually video their stroke from side on and almost draw a line from where they're set up and actually to the top and the follow through, you've almost got your TP kind of feel. And if that's so locked in, they would notice the lines become away from the center point. So people would then find that the center point for them to maintain that on, there will be an element of some breakdown or whether people notice too much and the lines then go behind them.
Yep.
It'd be a good analogy for them to see, especially when they're at home.
Correct. So if I'm a player who's too wristy, essentially what would happen is by this stage of the swing, the end of the putter would be pointing out here, and then especially in the follow through, right? If I'm someone who doesn't use their arms at all, doesn't use their wrists at all, there's a good chance that I might be like pulling the putter back and pulling it through. Now you can see that the handle is moving around.
Yeah.
Whereas it's a harmony of this upper body rotation, a softening of the wrists, and then it feels like it flows really beautifully back and forth. Very similar to if you're holding a ball, that arm would arc back and through, and that little bit of wrist hinge would move due to the weight of the ball and also giving us a little bit more feel there.
Yeah, and I think another good drill people might have seen as well is the alignment stick. So you can stick the alignment stick in, and again, just making a few strokes that will feel more or less movements depending on what their tendencies are. But again, it's just giving them a feeling of, like I say, how the body and wrist position would feel. Correct.
So what Danny was just saying there is if I bring this putter more so up into my sternum, would you say?
Yeah, or you could either do that way, or if you was to drop the putter down and you was to get an alignment stick, if you was to stick the alignment stick from there, which would then stick into the sternum, as you would make your stroke, that alignment stick would follow, and then what you'd see is if you were, let's say, moving the handle too far away, the alignment stick would feel like it wants to move across one of your pecs.
Yeah. So I think a great visual reference that players can use there is simply just by videoing themselves from face on, drawing a line from the end of the putter shaft. Try get that somewhere, where would you say, just forward of center?
Just forward of center,
Just forward of center. In the backstroke, within reason, if they were to draw that line, same sort of position. And then on the follow through, same sort of position. As long as their head is staying relatively stable, that would mean that you have a nice harmony of upper body rotation, a little bit of wrists. Let's put that into effect and see how that comes off. Feeling that upper body turn, wrists are nice and soft. Not trying to get too stiff here. Feeling the weight of the putter head swing, I think, is a nice feel. Look, not exactly perfect, but close enough where I'll be able to hold that.
Again, the expectation of this hole is low, so all round, not a bad putt.
Love it. Thanks, man.